Welcome, friends. This is Pastor Brian Hudson. Welcome to Conversations in Focus. This program is designed to bring people to you whom I believe are doing a great work in the community and kingdom, people who are making a difference, who are influencing influencers. And I thank God for a man here today, a man of God, whom I have met today in person, really for the first time I'm aware of.
That's right.
But been acquainted with this brother for a number of years through Dr. Mark Echo, through Pastor Julie Stevens, and some others. So I want to welcome to the studio, welcome to our conversation, Dr. Clyde Posley, Jr. Welcome, Dr. Posley.
Delighted to be here. Delighted to be here.
Thank you,
My
sir.
pleasure.
Thank
My
you so
pleasure.
much. Appreciate
Thank
you
you
so
for the
much.
invitation.
Now, Dr. Posley is a multi-talented man of God who has been highly sought after as an evangelist, an instructor, a conference speaker, a forum panelist over 30 years throughout the country. Dr. Posley has worked as an adjunct professor in the social science, as a social science lecturer in several universities across the nation. He is currently the pastor, a senior pastor of Antioch Baptist Church here in Indianapolis, Indiana. So he is a shepherd above all here in our city.
Absolutely.
Dr. Posley is the president of the Pastors and Ministers Division of Union District Baptist Association, located here in the city of Indianapolis. He has authored a comprehensive ministerial training curriculum for Christian ministers entitled Union District Association Pastors and Ministers Conference Ministerial Certificate Program. Dr. Posley currently is a coordinator for the Racial and Social Justice Division of Union District Baptist Association here in the city of Indianapolis. And he is also a senior editor of the Union District Quarterly Newsletter. So he is a man of service, of dedication to people, a leader of leaders, and I appreciate that. And additionally, Dr. Posley serves as executive chaplain for Pink Forever Breast Health Education Service Organization. That's a very important cause and very important ongoing need
Absolutely.
in every community. And so I thank God that Dr. Posley is here to talk to us about a book that has just been released. And this book here in my hand, you see it here, I'm put it on the screen as well. This is a book entitled More Than Icons and Images, Uncovering the Hidden Protest Narrative of the Black American Athlete in the 21st Century. And I have begun to read this book, the Kindle edition, and I want to tell you, it's a book that you need to get a hold to right now.
Thank you.
I just put on the website address below me. Just feel free to visit the website. Throughout the show, you'll see this website. And you can get the Amazon print edition. You can get the Kindle editions available as well.
That's right.
Because we need context on what God is doing and what men are doing who are athletes in our society.
That's right.
So enough said. Let me get down to welcoming again our guest and ask the first question. Dr. Posley, why did you write the book More Than Icons and Images?
I wrote first of all, let me thank you again for being here, Pastor Hudson. It's an honor to be here. Your scholarship, the history and the reputation of your scholarship precedes you, So just the fact that I'm invited here to sit at this table means the world to me.
Thank you.
I wrote the book to further engage in a discourse, Pastor Hudson, that has been going on in America of late, but more importantly, for probably 400 years. And my doctoral work, my area of research is how sports, politics, and cultural studies and race intersect. And so I thought it fitting to engage at this point in this conversation, particularly with the Kaepernick protest being viewed and given multiple narratives from multiple sources. This book engages and gives some context by way of history about that intersectionality and how it is not new. It's as old as the revolt of the Mandinka warriors, original slaves here on American soil, and their punishment as a result of those revolts was to be cut into pieces and thrown in fires in front of slaves who watched as a means of teaching other Mandinka warriors and slaves not to revolt. But that revolt happened in a sports arena. They were being forced to fight each other, and they did not want to do it. So I was trying to engage intelligently, but practically, in a discourse that's been underway for years.
Yes. You say context, and that word really is a powerful word. In reality, you mentioned Colin Kaepernick, and we're aware of the protest. People say he protesting the flag, and that's a false narrative.
That's just
obviously
not true.
But the idea that NFL is 70% black men, and that people come out, including the president, call them SOBs and all this, and people don't understand this is not just the quirks of a man. It's not just the behavior of a man, the president, but it is something rooted in history. And this book brings out the background. Why do people disconnect history from present, Doctor?
Normally it's advantageous. Normally it's advantageous. More often than not, when people seek to usurp a narrative, to do so is in some way advantageous for them. If I can disconnect any event from a history that hurts what I'm trying to accomplish at that moment, then I'll do so if I'm selfish, if I'm about myself. And if you look at history, Pastor Hudson, historically, when people try to change the narrative, like not only with the black men protest, but moreover with what black masculinity means, it is because it is advantageous to what they're trying to accomplish. The slave owners did so, trying to keep fear about what a black man might do if he were free. Again, I'm trying to change the narrative at that time. They're trying to change the narrative about the black mystique and make it a frightening black scare. It is why Jim Crow occurred. In a Douglas Blackman 2011 book, he wrote a book entitled Slavery by Another Name. That's why Jim Crow existed, because of trying to change the narrative of how dangerous blacks being free would be to the culture.
Yes.
Even the true meaning of the Emancipation Proclamation and what Abraham Lincoln actually was trying to accomplish.
Yes.
So to reiterate my point, people more often change narratives because they are afraid of the truth of the actual history in a narrative.
Yeah. What I want to do as well is educate in this program. So you mentioned the word Jim Crow. We've heard it before. What was Jim Crow? Jim Crow laws.
In a snapshot, Jim Crow laws were laws set up post-Emancipation Proclamation in the what's called the Reconstruction era, designed to re-enslave, if you will, slaves who had recently been released as a result of the 1863 Emancipation Proclamation. These laws were set up to feed farm systems which were designed to replace actual slave ownership. And so certain laws, like if you whistle on a Tuesday, walking down the left side of the street, 10 years was the crime, if you recall, for that. If you've ever heard the term, Pastor Hudson, a barrel of laughs, well, there was a Jim Crow law that was set up in the late 1890s that if a black person were caught laughing out loud and convicted of that crime, they could be sentenced to 10 years. I'll get back to that in just a second. So what many blacks had to do, because these laugh barrels were placed in several places, located in several places in the city, they had to get inside the barrel, cover themselves up. It was labeled laughing barrel and had a black face on it. And if a black was to because they knew that law, they had to get in that barrel and laugh. If caught laughing outside the barrel, that's where a barrel of laughs came from.
Wow!
And so these farm systems were as I said, the reincarnation, if you will, of the slave plantation.
Yes.
And so these Jim Crow laws were then set up, and these owners of these farms would be the individuals that the judge would turn the convicted person over to, and they became the penal system, and where we get our what we know chain gangs from.
Yes, my. Again, our listeners, I'm not assuming people know these things, so this is a history lesson today. In addition to all that you have done, and you are an historian as well, sir. I've read this in the book. I understand that.
I'm a fledgling historian. I just try to do some research.
But you mentioned the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, came forth. But listen to what it says. The 13th Amendment says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. Now, it outlawed slavery. Right?
Outlawed, supposedly.
But the language reads exactly this way. It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Right. So it outlawed slavery, but it said, except as a punishment for crime.
Absolutely.
Now, that's something that I didn't notice until I saw the documentary a couple years ago.
13.
So basically, it was the emancipation. They crafted it in a way that they allowed Southerners to have this amendment so that it was still possible to enslave if you were convicted of a crime.
That is why,
as a punishment for crime.
That is why Douglas Blackman's Slavery by Another Name is such a powerful book. Yes, because all it does is it's the same soup warmed over. Yes, and Jim Crow laws historically, as well as many of the laws on our in many of the states in our constant legislation, are based on that. In fact, the incarceration system. Michelle Alexander will be here next Tuesday at Clues Hall. And she's the author of the book Mass Incarceration. Right. The incarceration system of America is the most lucrative business in the country. Yes. Pastor Hudson, let's consider that. Basically, a variation or the use of the 13th Amendment is the most lucrative business in America.
Free labor.
Free labor.
And see, people don't understand this. I was in Starbucks talking to a friend of mine, a white gentleman who's a friend, and he asked me, why are so many black men not with their families and all this? And honest question. I said, well, did you know about 13th Amendment, what it says? I heard about it. You know what it says?
Yeah, it's different than just hearing about it.
And I gave him a little bit of a history of how that it was to the advantage of people, and especially in the 50s and 60s, if you can incarcerate a black man, powerful black man, put him in prison, put him in chains, and make him work these prison farms. Sure, he could produce products. And now, of course, there's profit. For-profit prisons now. Sure. My point is, he didn't understand the fact that a lot of men were wrongly convicted, taken away from their homes. Take a man from his home, that breaks the family down quickly. Right. And then they complain. Then people want to complain about situations and say, well, the unwed births and all that. Well, yeah, these things are happening, but have some context, and then have compassion, get understanding, so that you won't be falling into a false narrative and saying that these folk must have done it to themselves. Yeah.
Nor did we craft the mindset that often produces it. Right. The mindset that produces some of the behavior that is such a monstrosity, atrocity to some people, was formulated by how urban America was even structured in the 50s and 60s. Right. Cabrini Green apartments, structures like that. The reason that on the West Coast, the Sacramento area, what we know as Compton today, where so much of the protests came from, the reason those protests were set up that way was because of how urban America had been set up. Yes, it was set up to subjugate. Yes. This is true about Detroit. This is true about New Orleans. This is true about the Sanford area of Florida, and Chicago and Indianapolis. Yes, and so these mindsets are often the offsprings of what keeping an education from a vital education from a people can do to a people. Yes. Not putting grocery stores in their area can do to a people. Yes. Policing them in a robust and ungodly manner. It's what it produces. So We had another conversation earlier, but you cannot say you want people to be better, but don't put in line the things that cause them to be better as a result of what you say you're implementing to make them better. That's just, you put these rules in, and then when they break the rules, instead of habilitating them back, you put them in a system to make money off of them. So it can be said historically and today that by and large, the gatekeepers of such events, Pastor Hudson, want crime. They take advantage of crime, because if CCA is a lucrative business and I'm a business person who is invested in CCA, I don't want crime to stop. I want crime to increase. I want to agitate you by how I police you, because I hope that you commit a crime, because when you commit a crime, my stock go up. I don't want crime to stop. I want crime to increase.
My. And this seems far-fetched to some listeners.
Sure.
But if you have historical context, it's not far-fetched at all.
Absolutely. And you have to approach it that way, Pastor.
Yes.
That's the only way that you can, in my view, have a viable argument, and when I say argument, I mean notions. Have viable notions. You cannot just take an event, but this thing has an epistemology. It has a series of ways that information is transmitted, and history is one of them, not just one event. When we isolate an event like Kaepernick, for example, we can just talk about that event, and uninformed people's opinions matter more when they don't have a context or a history, with what they're saying.
Yes. Now, let me say this as well. The next question here, in fact, we're going to talk a lot about situations that are facing African Americans and what athletes are doing, what they can do, what they have done. And I want to also, but first talk about somebody in our lives, both of our lives, a white gentleman.
That's right.
Understand that we're not down on white folk. We don't believe in that. We just want everybody, and those who have the most, to whom much is given, much is required. So we want people to step up. But there is a gentleman who educated both of us. I just found out reading the preface to your book.
That's right.
That you gave credit to a man named Mr. Robert Urbane.
Robert Urbane.
Now, Robert Urbane was my English teacher at Arlington High School in the 70s. And he was still there when in the 80s.
Yes, sir, in the early 80s.
Then Clyde, young man Clyde Posley came through. And I want to say this because Mr. Urbane inspired us in a very specific way. That is, that he helped us to become writers.
Exactly.
To become thinkers. Let me ask you about Mr. Urbane and just the idea of how educators can have this much impact, and a white gentleman, unafraid, in a black school. Talk about his impact and what he represents.
Mr. Urbane, Pastor, represented someone believing in me outside of my house. Certainly my parents believed in me. I have 4 siblings, and I came from a home where education was pushed. It was important for us to make sure that we did a good job. But teachers needed to reinforce that. And now my parents had only had teachers to reinforce their commitment and importance of education from people who look like them. It is not lost knowledge, Pastor, that Mr. Urbane was white and clearly cared about his black students.
Yes, he did.
That's a big deal, because we live in a world that is not predominantly black, is not predominantly white. You have to get in. You have to learn how to navigate the kaleidoscopic nature of the globe.
Yes,
Mr. Urbane represented for me, and it later helped me walk into types of diversity that his interaction with me is rooted in. That to be successful, he represented the notion that to be successful, you have to be diverse. And as you know, I host a internet show with, as you mentioned, Dr. Mark Eckel.
Yes,
a white professor.
Right.
There's no way a person can tell me that type of interaction, what we are doing at this stage of our lives, is not influenced by understanding that. this man, and you're going to get into why he wasn't afraid to deal with us like culture would say, but this man treated us like, look, I'm not afraid. And so, and now I have we have humanities type degrees.
Yes.
And so that's a big deal. I appreciate what Mr. Urbane had to say, what he did, and just taking the time to show me my potential.
Yes, and to, again, his credit, and to the credit of educators like him, my habit was I came to his room to that class after the lunch break, right, which I became sleepy, right? So I sat in the back of the room, propped up 2 books, put my head down, tried to sleep. We had an assignment for a creative piece, writing piece, and I wrote that. He was very impressed with that, so impressed, he moved me from the back row to the front row and made me sit in front of him and pay attention. And I never forgot that, and I became a writer behind that. And then, to the question why Mr. Urbane, he wore those horn-rimmed glasses. I'm showing his picture now on the screen, okay? He wore these glasses. He wore apparently the same suit, like Men in Black. But he was not afraid of us. And we used that. We were big guys as kids. We used that against some teachers.
Sure.
But Mr. Urbane was never afraid of us, no intimidation. I found out later that he was a Golden Gloves boxer. The man was a boxer. So if push came to shove,
he could handle himself.
We all be in trouble. Right. So my point to bringing him up is that, don't paint a narrative for us that we're against white folks and all that. No. We want folk to do the right thing, and we honor anybody, white, black, in this case, a white man who did a tremendous service to many, many young people, including Dr. Posley and I.
Sure.
So I thank him. I hope he's still alive. I don't know. But men like Mr. Urbane and other men, coaches, Mr. Brown, all the men and women in our lives, our parents most of all. Okay, Dr. Posley, let me ask you this question. What's most misunderstood about black athletes who use their voice to influence and affect social change?
Without doubt, without question, I believe the biggest misunderstanding or misnomer about politically conscious black athletes who protest is that they are anti-American, that they are not patriotic, that they are an enemy to the state, and that they somehow, in the context of Kaepernick's, that they somehow hate the flag. That is just not true. And it is mean-spirited. It not only is it's just wrong, but it is mean-spirited to assume that a person who is using an avenue that they have, a platform they've been given, to voice their concerns about how they're being treated. It's mean-spirited to simply say that they don't have the same values that you do, that they don't care in life like you do, that they don't care about the well-being of the culture as others say they do. It's just wrong. The protest of Tommie Smith and John Carlos, which is the centerpiece of the book, points to the fact that they had to deal with that same thing, Pastor Hudson. They were treated. The famous reporter Brent Musburger famously insulted them, saying that the two of them raising black gloves made them look like black-faced paratroopers. Years ago, the Brent Musburger said that, and there's so many other insults that they received, but they were not doing that. They were simply using the platform that which had caused them to be so celebrated beforehand.
Yes.
These were the two most famous track stars in the country at that time.
Yes.
Tommie Smith is arguably the greatest sprinter in history, and he developed the high knee process of running. It was his nickname was the Antelope. But he was considered. It was said that they were simply disrupting. No, they were disrupting another person's narrative.
Yes,
and then we'll get into some of the reasons why that's so fearful for the gatekeepers of the sports arena a little bit later.
Now, what is it then, Dr. Posley, in the ethos or character of many black men, including us, that compel us to advocate and take action rather than just be silent and let things roll along as they are?
Pastor Hudson, truthfully, I believe it's because we are acquainted with grief. I have a quote above the first chapter, above the introduction, I believe, that said, Arthur Ashe said, to be black in America is to have a second job. Yes. And so we recognize that. We sympathize with it and understand that because of the structure of America, a black man is given baggage that he must deal with and steward just to fit in into the country in which he was born. Yes. And so we recognize that. Our hearts go out to it. My heart goes out to the black beggar in the same way it goes out to went out to Abdul Rauf, who was Chris Jackson, who now is still playing in the professional basketball, right, but has been basically banished from the NBA for his religious beliefs and what he did at the playing of the national anthem. And Craig Hodges, who was sent a letter to President Bush after being invited to the White House about black subjugation, and could not get another job in the NBA following that. So there's a punishment. So basically, the whole shut up and dribble context that Laura Ingraham, the Fox News journalist, brought in, it's not new. Yes. It was just coined. The phrase was coined a little bit differently, but it had been going on for years. Yeah. Shut up. But we sympathize with that. We care about that. We see it. We know the pain of being pushed to the back of maybe not a bus, yes, but the back, have our application pushed to the bottom of the pile when we're just as qualified as someone else. Yes, yeah. And I'm sure that we all feel the same way. If we feel that we're being wronged, or more importantly, if a loved one's being wronged or a fellow person being wronged, we want to stand up for them. Sure. And so, but as you say, we're acquainted with grief. Right. So when you've been through something and you get through it, you have zero tolerance for that continuing and affecting others. Sure. I want to bring this up. It's really important. I'll close with my statements of what you said. We bought 14 acres of land. My church, the Antioch Church, bought 14 acres of land at 21st and Cumberland. Maybe I won't call the name of the association that fought us, right, but they fought us, and in the meeting, we went to trial, went down before they ended up going down, and we won the case. The president of that association stood up and said, look, let's just be clear. We don't want a black church in our community. At least he's honest about it. We do not want, and we won the case. We won the case. We ended up not building there for different reasons. Right. But we won the case, and but it cost us about $20,000 in legal fees. But he specifically, look, we don't want. He said, we know you. We understand that people like to hear you preach. We don't want to hear you preach. Right. So I said, that's unfortunate. So the thing to do is not come to my church. Well. So I've been there. But I wanted to say a principle that's really important that I want our viewers to remember. Silence to injustice makes one complicit. Yes, it does. When you do not say, you are allowing. You mentioned something earlier in the discussion that we were having. I wish you could have had it on camera. How we talked about when we're concerned about, people, some of the rhetoric of the current president. But there are others who say that they believe in right who don't stand against it. Silence becomes complicit. Yes. So true. So true. And I thought as well, Pastor, that when we stand on constitutional rights, your case and my case, in the zoning issue, for example. Notice this. One thing my attorney observed and put in the order to overturn, the judge, Superior Court judge told my attorney, you write the order. But the point was this. We were in our constitutional rights. The building was adequate, a lot of exits, everything's good. And so we found that the principle that the ordinances were trying to be used
to obscure our constitutional rights. And that's always been our experience.
And you have to know that.
Yes.
You have to know that. You have
yes.
Knowledge. That's why, research and just knowledge, seeking. That's our biggest in the African American culture. One of the things I struggle with our people is not taking advantage of information that is available.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, another question here. Back to our discussion about your book. Now, why is there a sense of loathing toward African American men and athletes in particular? Again, that statement you referred to, Laura Ingraham made about LeBron James, just shut up and dribble, very disrespectful, as if she's saying, stay in your place.
There you go. There you go.
So why is there this loathing toward men who stand and who are strong and who are effective? I mean, LeBron James is the best among us. He's not somebody who can be easily criticized.
Pastor Hudson, I believe there is in the foundation and the structuring, at least the imagination of America, the gatekeepers or the powers that be of business and enterprise and the sports culture, the leadership of that black men are to be used and not heard. The stay in your place comment, I believe, is consistent with and you can tell a tree by the fruit it bears.
Yes.
This book is written is based in what's called a performance theory, particularly black performance theory. It's one of the humanities, and in it, what you do is you interpret the behaviors of people, and take that as word. Their actions become sites of knowing. I talked about that in the book. We live in a culture today that, whether it's said openly or not, that by and large believes that the greatest information, the most vital things, are not supposed to come from or be led by black people. Racism is a problem, but in most instances, we don't want to hear it from a black leader. Obama's presidency was undermined and what he was trying to accomplish, even by some in the African American culture who have bought into the notion that the best information comes from white people, or comes from white authors, or comes from white legislators, or comes from white economic analysts. And there is the dangerous imagination in some white. I wrote an article. I also write for the Indianapolis Recorder. And I wrote an article about blackness, entitled Blackness in the White Imagination. And there is this notion where some people can know that a black person is good-hearted, good-meaning, good intention, and has treated them well, but they're black. So they can't possibly be a good business owner.
Yes.
Or they can't possibly be a good pastor.
Right.
There's got to be something. I mean, well, why do you think that about them? Well, I'm not sure why I think that about them. They can't be the best at it. It can't be that LeBron, who left the NBA, left high school, went to the NBA, could be knowledgeable enough to actually talk about sports. So if I really believe that, what I need to do to really help you is to tell you, stop talking and just perform.
Yes. And to your point, I'm a black man. That's pretty obvious. And I have a business. I'm a pastor, also operate a business, production business. We do pretty good work, has been said. But you know what I have to do sometimes, Doc? I send my work ahead of me. I make sure you see my work before you see me.
Absolutely. And that's unfortunate,
now, that's not something wrong.
wise.
Yeah, but some would say, well, you shouldn't feel like that.
No. That's the world we function in. That's the world we function in.
And that's why, and to the point of white privilege, for example. See, white privilege is not an attack on white folks. You should be proud of what you've done, what you've earned. You've earned your way through life like everybody else has. But white privilege, so you don't have to send your work ahead of you.
Right.
Just in case somebody might see your face and make an assumption about the quality of your work, to your point. So these are things that we're navigating. But back to your book, Doc. So let me ask you this.
I discuss these things in the book.
It's in the book. Yes, it is. I'm just a lowly guy, but these are major athletes, successful, mostly college educated, been to school. A lot of them have. LeBron didn't go to college, but he's smart. The point is, why would anybody have a problem with any man who would use his platform to take a stand for an issue that's important to him?
Yeah. Well, in a world,
not affecting the actual game, not affecting his work, on the field or court.
Well, in a world, well, let's break it down like this, Pastor Hudson. There's only one black NBA owner, basically, principal owner.
Right.
There are no black principal owners in NFL.
Not even close. Right.
No black principal owners in Major League Baseball. No black principal owners in the NHL. So what you have is when you have a athlete to speak up, they're going to be viewed with a raised eye, because a lot of the subjugation of which they speak, particularly that type of subjugation that Kaepernick spoke of, is promoted by some of the owners who are hearing their employee say such things. And so you have so naturally the NFL could band together, the owners could band together and refuse to allow these gentlemen to take a knee, because actually some of them are, I heard it, I used to have an older preacher used to tell me, it's the hit dog makes the most noise. Not that I'm calling NFL owners dogs, but right. If you're talking about things that I'm a part of and my behavior as an owner is keeping done, if I'm subjugating, like, for example, if a lot of guys, well, you're making all this money. A lot of people say, well, you're making all this money. Just be quiet and make your money. You're making $20 million a year. Yeah, but the owner's making $2 billion.
Right.
Right. Is that a fair? Because without me, he doesn't make any money.
Yeah, why bring up the issue of money?
Yeah, exactly. And there you go. So why? So you're telling me that I should value money more than standing for the cause that would help better my people?
Yes.
So it's the back to stay in your place. You are a employee. You are, and I hate to use the word, but that's a slave right. and master mindset. Right. You don't dare bite the hand that is feeding you.
Well, I bought you.
Exactly, and I own you.
We talk about buying these athetes in the sense that they're being hired for their talents.
Which apparently is buying their silence.
Seems like
there's an undercurrent, or underlying narrative that if I'm paying you, I'm paying you to be quiet.
Right.
Because if I'm telling you don't protest, I'm basically saying, as Jerry Jones has all but came out and said, I'm paying you. And if I don't make money, you don't make money. Yeah. So be quiet.
Well, I understand his concern. Ratings have dropped a little bit, but football is not under attack. Football won't go away. People love football.
Right.
And I think that people have oversold, and the false narrative, basically, of protesting the flag. We all love our flag. We all honor our service people. And it's amazing that people still believe any kind of protest, any kneeling, quietly, silently kneeling on one knee is somehow injurious to our American ideal.
Absolutely.
But as you say, it's more to the fact we want those guys, those men, those boys to stay in their place.
To be controlled.
Those SOBs,
exactly. Because when Tim Tebow kneeled, it was godly.
Right.
Kaepernick kneeled, it is protesting the flag.
Yes.
What many of the owners don't want is protest.
Right.
And it's not that they're so religious, because many of them, some are on record as being atheists. Yeah. They don't believe in religion. They don't believe in God. So they don't care if Tim Tebow kneeled, which he frequently did.
He did.
But they do care about Kaepernick.
Right.
So then what is the difference? Kaepernick is black and Tebow is white. And I don't want you.
Yeah. It's that simple, isn't it? Yeah.
It's that simple.
Now, in your book, you made note of Thomas Jefferson. We know how one of the primary writer of the Constitution, a man who is revered, and we respect him. He was a slave owner, by the way. Never gave his slaves up,
and he believed in it. That's why I put such a huge quote in the book. I wanted people to have that knowledge.
Yes, but among believers, he's almost revered, and conservative especially.
I was about to say conservative leaders.
But he did Louisiana Purchase, which was the biggest government thing ever. But here's the point. In your book, you write this: Jefferson, widely accepted as one of the Enlightenment period's most influential thinkers, wrote in his famous notes on the state of Virginia, great difference. This is the portion here of race and race relations, as though the subordinate role allotted to blacks was their natural, innate positioning. Jefferson further states that African Americans, or Negroes, you probably would say then, are inferior in the faculties of reason and imagination. Inferior in the faculties of reason. Now, people say, well, that was then, this is now.
No, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not saying that, but it's interesting. Okay, so then we want to then, you know, include history when the discussion goes to Jefferson, and exclude history when it includes a repression.
Exactly.
So we need to be consistent and recognize what we're experiencing today. The seeds of it were planted a long time ago.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That he believes that it is the proper, that to be subordinate to whites, blacks, to be subordinate to whites is the proper and logical position for blacks to be in, because, and he goes on to talk about more than their mental faculties, that our religion, that the black religion is no more than witchcraft, that it's conch shell and incantations, and that we don't basically have sense enough to be religious, for even our religion to be respected.
Yes. Yes.
And that's consistent with the 13th chapter.
Yes.
We belong in a position of subjugation.
Right.
And so you can judge a tree by the fruit it bears.
Yes. And we raise these issues because we want to understand, we know we're in the 21st century, we know how long ago things have occurred, have been, but why do we disconnect? We cannot disconnect the historical context from many things happening today.
That's right.
And that's why, you know, men like myself, Dr. Posley, many others, we just choose to not be silent, take a stand, push back against the president, whoever, Ingram, whoever it is, because we can't let a false narrative go unchallenged.
By truth.
Yes.
Exactly.
And we're in fact trying to help our brothers and sisters.
That's right.
You know, of all persuasions,
well
white,
said.
black, because if we don't stand up, make a voice heard, then change won't occur.
That's right.
Another quote from your book here. I'm looking, made some highlights, and this is context of how to control black men. And it says here, this one note here, this quote from a book by Barnett and Royster. Further, the public humiliation of blacks helped to perpetuate the concept of cultural dominance via the enactment of public lynchings in America. Public lynching was a form of humiliation. So that, you know, well, people say, well, we don't lynch. Not that way, but lynching or humiliation is still happening in lesser forms.
Because part of keeping a culture, in particular the black male, subjugated is to control the narrative of his masculinity. It is valuable to me on the sports field. It is dangerous to me in the political room and in the boardroom. And so what I have to make sure is that I keep him in his place by publicly vilifying him and keeping him dark, and keep his perception of him dark, and keeping him associated with the darkness of that it may be in his culture. If he commits a crime, he's OJ. If he commits a murder, then they're all dangerous savages. We have to keep so many people who are the gatekeepers of trying to maintain subjugation, particularly of the black man. They do it by controlling the public perception of black masculinity, even in some regards, to try to tear it down and make it effeminate, make it acceptable to be effeminate. Make it to make us all playboys, or to the other extreme, or just that we only care about ravaging women and destroying. No, if I can tear down the powerful image and the viable image of the black man, I can keep him in his place.
Yes.
And this is alive and well, Pastor Hudson.
It is. I mean, I'm outspoken. My friends know that. I'm not wild and radical, but I'm pretty clear. And I maintain a blog in which I'm a student of what I'm talking about, and I don't just say things and can't back it up.
To that.
You know,
Absolutely.
I got hundreds of articles in my blog.
I can testify to that.
But my point is, now let's talk about solutions. Solutions. People talk about bridging the gaps, bridging racial divides, and so forth. But how do we have a dialogue about these important matters when so many other narratives crowd our intellectual and social spaces? How do we have a dialogue when the false narrative is just staring us in the face?
Well, you know, Martin Luther King said that the moral arc of justice of the world bends toward justice.
Yes.
And while it may take long, it's going to bend toward justice
Yes,
and truth and what is right. We have to implement actual programs, which is why Dr. Echo and I have the radio show that we do. We specifically tout, we push the fact that here are two, you know, he uses the term a lot, PhDs, who are specifically trying to have conversations and to be seen having these conversations.
Right.
So I say that as a segue into this thought that we need to actually implement programs and implement schools and integrate church worship in ways that integrate and speak to the reality and the kaleidoscopic truth about the world.
Right.
I didn't say lose your culture.
Right.
Let's just use New Covenant for an example, or the Antioch Church. We have to integrate. I didn't say try not to sound cultural, if you will.
Sure.
I didn't say don't sing historically cultural gospel music. I'm saying include other types of music along, because heaven is not going to look like most of our churches, our church congregations. Sure. There's no black section, there's no white section. And so we have to start to actually perform the truths of this. This book is not designed, for example, to divide people. Right. It's designed to bring people together with truth and on truth.
Yes.
Latinos in America is a reality.
Yes.
Blacks and whites and Asians in America is a reality. It is ridiculously unintelligent to try to tribalize oneself and get yourself away from people. We need to learn, to speak other languages, and that's just the way it is.
That's right. Exactly.
It's just the way it is. You need to learn to integrate. And I've heard some very extreme black activists, as well as there are some white ones, but I'm speaking about the extreme black ones, who say that the best way for America to go forward is for blacks to only have their own. I don't want to live in an America or a world where only one culture consists. Yes. I don't want that.
In America especially.
Exactly.
America is e pluribus unum, out of many one.
Yeah, many one.
And that is our specific mission to the world, I believe, even though it's being challenged by nationalism. And to your point, Doctor, as far as solutions go, I've always thought this, and I've had dialogues in person, online, with different ones. In fact, last week I had a Facebook discussion with a friend, and he brought up, this is a white brother, brought up the Greenwood massacre, Greenwood, Oklahoma. Greenwood was a town that existed near Tulsa. It was called the Black Wall Street.
Right.
But then there was a situation that happened, and was basically they missed a black boy was accused of something he didn't do, but it caused a riot in terms of, well, not a riot, but it caused white folk to come in and burn the city down, kill people. Okay, now so we had a discussion about that and how bad it was and how we can work this out. But one of his commenters made the comment, we have to stop mobs on every side, and everybody got mobs. And no, everybody not doing mobs. Everybody moral equivalence. To try to reduce everything down to everybody did it, everybody's responsible. Yeah. Not always true. We shouldn't go that way. Let's be specific. Let's be surgical. My point is this. I made a point to a gentleman on the forum that we got to look specifically at groups, whether, mainly look at these extreme right, the skinheads, the KKK, and white nationalists, supremacists, that they are a major problem. Right. And there's no equivalent to that on the left side, so to speak.
That's right.
Now,
seeking to kill.
Right. I made the point, and then he came after me and attacked me personally. Here's the solution. Watch this now. My white friend defended my honor in that same forum. Let me tell you about Brian Hudson, the kind of man he is. So my friend shut this other guy down. And
we need more of that.
Now, that doesn't happen very often.
That's right.
Often when you get into engagements like this and you get, you make your point and you become attacked, because of it, then folk won't defend you. They'll go silent. They'll get quiet.
Right.
In the dialogues we have, when we need to touch on difficult subjects and make our points, our points clear, our point of view clear, and someone disagrees vehemently, well, then they need to understand, first of all, you need to respect who's talking to you.
That's right. That is true.
I tell people, Doc, I said, now, if Dr. Posley tells me anything that I don't understand, and it's surprising to me, because of his character, I'm going to believe him. I'm not going to question what he's saying, his motivation, because he wouldn't have said that if he were not knowledgeable and sincere. So my point is, in our dialogues, we're going to have to take the positions that we're in covenant. We're covenant brothers, black, white, whomever, and that if I share something with you, you don't understand, open your mind up.
Which is probably more of the reality than anything else.
Yes.
You're bringing a point that they didn't understand.
Correct.
You're bringing in some information. As you were speaking about that, Pastor Hudson, it came to me about the importance of relationships.
Yes.
Relationships are the single most important thing in the world. And we live in a world today that, interestingly enough, we have more access to the thoughts of others by the internet, social media, Twitter, Facebook, all that. And yet we live in an age where democracy is suffering more maybe than ever in America.
Yes.
We have access to what others say more than ever, but we want to hear less of other people's opinions, which is odd. There's a principle that's important here about relationships. And Pastor, you're going to want to preach this. I think it's good. When God told Noah to make the ark, and he destroyed the earth through water, the second time, everything in the ark was in relationship. Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives. And every animal that Noah put in that ark was in a relationship.
Yes.
He went and got both a male and a female, everything. And so what God establishes is the importance of relationship.
Yes.
In everything that we do.
Yes.
That is the thing that the enemy, in my view, wants to tear down. He wants to tear down another person's actions by another person's narrative, which is so dangerous, because if the person who disagrees with what is happening would simply talk and ask questions of the persons who are doing something they don't like, or the person, then that would have a chance to build us all up, because it would enhance the relationship. So I think the principle of relationship is suffering. It suffers on Facebook.
Yes.
Because we have trouble hearing other people.
Right.
And we don't like that people don't. Sometimes we don't like that they know more about something than we do.
Yes.
Sometimes that's just offensive because of ego.
Right.
And then other times we only want to be heard, and we don't want to hear.
Yes.
And I think you do a tremendous job at it, because we're talking about solutions. If we stop talking, we've lost.
Yes.
We have to talk. We have to do more than talk, but we have to keep communicating.
Yes.
Because the moment we stop, we're in trouble.
And the communication and the talking is education.
Absolutely.
We don't resolve issues online, obviously, but the interactions of all types are educational.
It's not.
Sure.
When people are destroyed, the Bible that we believe, the Bible, the scriptures that we built our lives on, says people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge.
What they do not know brings their destruction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question again, solutions. Do this. What message do we give to young black men and young athletes in this era, in this time, who have been provided a platform with their success? So what should we tell young men who are going that direction, maybe high schoolers who are showing exceptional ability and gaining favor and notoriety? What do we tell them how to use their platform?
We consult history. Consult those who have protested.
Yes, yes.
You may even learn that some of the protests that they did that were scorned by people at their age, they have changed their mindset about how their approach. Let me say this. Let me go from this angle. I got into a conversation, thankfully. I'm trying to get in several conversations about the book. And someone asked me, did I agree with the Kaepernick protest? I said, I agree with protest when one feels subjugated anytime. But at the same time, I wish that Colin Kaepernick would have consulted with Tommie Smith, John Carlos. I talked at length with John Carlos as I did my dissertation, finishing my PhD. I talked to him about protests and what was on your mind at the time. Who influenced you? What was your relationship with Harry Edwards, who was in charge of OPHR at the time, the Olympic Project for Human Rights, but became frightened and didn't go to Mexico City, which is why they had to come up with a makeshift protest, Pastor Hudson, at the actual time. That was instigated by a white man.
I'll say.
The sprinter, Norman, gave them the ideas for the black gloves. He gave him one of the black gloves. And the idea of doing this on the medal stand protest when Harry Edwards didn't show up and others became afraid after they spoke with Jesse Owens, this idea of how they protest came from a white man, Norman. And so I think young guys would benefit, first of all, from getting a history of intelligent protest. What is wise? What makes the most sense? How should we go about this? Do we have to protest in a manner that causes us to be kicked out of a sport? Can we do both? LeBron James is doing both.
Yes.
So then that means you can get to a level. There's a way to get to a space before you protest potentially, or let's talk about it, where you won't have to lose your career to protest. So that brings in the notions and this discourse of timing about protest. Good. So I would suggest that they do that. But I would also suggest that if there are any athletes listening, this may seem like a plug, it's not, but I've written at my website that we're going to discuss a little bit later. I have a corporate training that I want to get into athletic departments where I come in and talk about, teach. I have a curriculum that I've written. It's on this website, and where I teach young athletes how to protest. What is intelligent protest? How to navigate the Me Too movement, and how to be proper, not be misogynist, how to treat women properly. And so there's a way to protest and be politically solvent and be woke, if you will. But it comes from information, not just passion.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I've been speaking with Dr. Clyde Posley Jr. About his new book that came out just recently in both
October 12th,
both print and Kindle edition. More Than Icons and Images: Uncovering the Hidden Protest Narrative of the Black American Athlete in the 21st Century. And you've seen below us here throughout the program this website, drclydeposley.com. That's where you want to go to learn more about Dr. Posley, to obtain information on how to get this book, or just go to Amazon.com and put in Clyde Posley. But you want to get this book. It's a dense book, but it's scholarly, but it's readable. He made it so that it can be read and consumed by anybody who can read. And we need context. And we read to lead, somebody said.
That's right.
And so I'm going to encourage you, if you're going to have a discussion on these issues, you need to be informed, okay? Right. And here's a resource that will give you historical context, documented sources. Right. So when you go into discussion with somebody, you're not just at the mercy of what you think and feel,
Right.
or at the mercy of a narrative.
Or what you heard. Right.
What you heard.
Right. Right.
You'll be able to be informed. So, Dr. Posley, thank you for being on the program today. This has been a marvelous conversation. I trust you have been informed and educated and inspired. Maybe maybe you feel a little bit tweaked, a little bit. That's okay. You feel a certain way about things.
We can talk about it.
As long as you come back down and think this through, because we are men, and Doc here is a man of integrity. Everything he has told you today is accurate from history and sincere from his heart.
That's right.
And the thing is, you can't dismiss a genuine, sincere person.
That's right.
And their concerns.
That's right.
You just cannot marginalize them. It doesn't make any sense. So thank you, Dr. Posley. As we close out, you want to share anything with our viewers and listeners as we close out today?
Yeah, I want to just really, I'm thankful to be here. I appreciate it. You are a scholar in your own right. In his public work, your work is well written, well thought out. I'm reading your blogs, and just that's how I really got to become a follower of yours is on social media, because I respect scholarship and the work that people put into it. But I really want to say, if people really want to come to know me, understand what I'm trying to accomplish in political science, go to www.drclydeposley.com, and there you will see that I've written a corporate diversity training for larger Fortune 500 companies, where I actually go into the boardroom and talk about how to structure the diversity component of corporate America. From a Kingian perspective, that's a nonviolent social interaction perspective, and I'm working with some things for young black boys, keeping them out of the system and teaching them how to integrate themselves into the school system. So this book is just but one product of that I'm trying to produce to make my mark in society, to help not just my people, but any people who understand that to survive in this world, you're going to have to be diverse and integrate with everyone else.
Well, thank you, Dr. Posley. You've been watching Conversations in Focus here on Vision Stream Network. I trust you were inspired and educated and informed. You also will be able to watch this on Facebook Live. There's also a podcast you can go to and watch and listen to this discussion on your phone, any device. Podcasts are great for that. And you'll find the podcast on iTunes or on TuneIn. We have also the podcast posted there. So again, thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for watching. Continue to be informed and inspired in your life. So God bless you. We'll see you next time.